Hello, everyone. My name is Servando Melendrez. I am the producer slash flex for our team. Our team is Group 3. We're a clean house, and our title for our game is Paranoia. So, for our vision statement, it's explore your new house as you attempt to tidy up, organize your belongings, and discover the secrets within the walls, all while confronting the lurking fear that someone or something is just around the corner. So for our producer's overview, we had 79 user stories assigned during the sprint. We had 49 of those user stories moved to verify. 0 of those user stories remain to verify. Those same 49 were moved into complete, and 30 user stories were assigned but not moved. So we did very well this sprint, and just overall, as you can see through our burn down chart, we're pretty much just like a tiny bit behind of our goal of about, I would say, 390 points. Overall, our team did very good over the course of the semester. So for what went right for me, so I would say that the team got along really well. We ended up finishing the game and created a complete playable experience. The game ended up having a really strong aesthetic and a creepy atmosphere that we were trying to go for. And overall, I just grew a lot as a producer by helping my team out, reducing scope, and keeping the project moving. So for what went wrong, Unreal and GitHub caused a lot of merge issues, corruption, and lost progress during the development. We were pretty ambitious early on, which kind of made it hard to finish every feature that we set out for originally. Some builds were made pretty close to the deadline, so that made playtesting and polishing a little stressful at times. What did I learn? I learned that as a producer, I need to be more direct with expectations, deadlines, and team communication. I would also gauge the team's output earlier so that the scope matches what we can realistically finish. I would try to focus on building the core gameplay framework first before we added any extra stuff to the game instead of doing it in later sprints. And I would push for earlier builds so that the team has time to playtest and fix the problems. And I learned a lot of things outside of my comfort zone as well, including learning Unreal blueprints for the first time and learning how to do the audio design for the game.
Hi, I'm Josh Siobhan. I was the lead designer for Paranoia, and this is my portion of the final presentation. So for what went right, the first thing I have is making the documentation. I did a lot of that, a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of, as you can see on the slide, visual documentation, such as placement maps. Also, the art style that I intended to set at the beginning ended up being pretty cohesive. Everything went well together, so I think for the most part that went very well. And then everyone, for the most part, was able to stay on task and complete their work on time. Everybody communicated very well, and I was very happy to see that. In terms of what went wrong, we had to iterate a lot more on the house structure than I anticipated. It was just a bit hard to figure out how some things fit together with the modular framework that we used. The biggest thing I would say is there was a lot of issues with merge conflicts in GitHub, so that kind of led us to being pushed back a bit and having to cut a lot of different aspects. One of the other difficulties we had towards the very end of the project was that there was a lot of trial and error to get the credence sequence to trigger correctly. So we had to make a lot of builds, around 5 in one day, to kind of figure out how to fix that and make sure for sure that it was implemented. What I learned from this project was how to document and explain all the aspects of the game idea that I had effectively. There was a lot more documentation that I had to make than I initially expected, but yeah, it was a good experience to kind of go through and make all of those things, as well as presenting my idea to others in a coherent way. I feel like a lot of the time I have a hard time explaining my ideas. And so what I've learned is that if I do it visually through drawings and through things like that, it helps me to present that in a better way to people. I also got more experience working in Unreal. I have had a little bit of experience prior to this, but this really helped me to extend my knowledge. And then lastly, it isn't technically programming related, but I did get to learn how to use the Fusion node editing system in DaVinci Resolve, and I used that to make some of the things like the end credit sequence. But thank you for watching my portion of the presentation.
Hi, my name is Brian Hodian, and here are the things that went right for me in this project. Communication went really well for everything, specifically the pixelization. We were able to get that set down pretty early, which was really nice. Communication between the designer and producer was also very good since we were able to get everything pretty much down to the idea of what the producer and designer wanted for the game. And having a lot of references was very useful for each of the models we created because it was able to keep everything down to the same era that the game was taking place in. Some of the things that went wrong were merging errors, which would make some of my files disappear, which is very bothersome at times. Having to deal with errors that would usually be at the very last minute, which was also a very big issue since we wouldn't be able to know what would go wrong or what was right, and it would cost us a lot of time to be able to fix. And the final thing, which would be builds being created very late, which would be a very big issue since we didn't get any time to play test any builds. So we wouldn't know what work would be in the game and what work wouldn't be in the game. Some of the things I learned was Unreal because I've never worked in Unreal, so it was very useful to get a lot of experience in Unreal. I learned that communication is very helpful for the team, especially when it comes down to us needing to change the way that we go on moving forward with the game, depending on the scenario we had. And I learned the importance of keeping track with the workflow of items that you're making since you want everything to be going smoothly, or else people would fall behind, which could be a very big problem, especially since you don't want to block anybody.
Hello, my name is Mikkel, and this is what went right. The cooperation to solve unforeseen problems was really good. Whenever something arose, we would be able to fix those problems right away. That way, nothing was lingering for too long. For each other, we were able to compromise for each other and cover for each other whenever it was needed. If we couldn't get something done, or if we couldn't make it to a class or an assignment, we would keep great communication and always cover for each other. The quality of work was also really amazing. Everyone did an amazing work and we did really good in terms of quality and quantity. So I'm really proud of that for everyone. What went wrong? I think there was a lack of communication for assignments. Sometimes assignments would be done by multiple people, they would be assigned to multiple people, or they would be done without prior notice. So I think a lot of hours were wasted on the work that was worked on twice as much. There was a lot of conflicts with GitHub where the project would be corrupted. That was really frustrating. We lost a lot of work. A lot of work had to be recreated, but we tried our best even when it took a lot of time. And personally, I think that we didn't take enough credit for some of the work that we did. I think that a lot of our work was really good quality and we deserve more points overall. And I think a lot of work also went without taking any points or any cards or credit. So we should definitely stay on top of always getting the credit that we deserve for, so that no work is taken for granted. What did we learn? Well, personally, I learned that communication is key and priority, especially so that we don't have any concerns and we always express our suggestions and opinions. For Unreal, I got very familiar with movement mechanics, so that was something new for me, and I got very good at UI, so I'm really proud of that. And what I would do differently is always express my expectations, ideas, and concerns, manage my time better, and always communicate so that we know we're good with each other. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eric Edwards, and today I want to talk about what went wrong, what went right, and what I would do differently during my next project with working with Unreal. An issue I had constantly with Unreal was it would break blueprints I was making. So Unreal and GitHub have a really weird issue where when working together, they do not actually resolve merge conflicts. They fake resolve them, but end up breaking the blueprint. So due to this, actually, like putting my work on the main scene was always a huge issue that I have to remake my scripts, which is my second issue. I think I spent a lot of this time on this project remaking scripts that were broken so we can get mechanics onto the screen game. Things that went right. I really like talking with my team. They always told me what they needed, what they wanted me to finish quickly, and I think it's really up to our producer. He gave me a lot of cards that I could like bring up, and he asked me if I was having any issues with them and things of that nature, and offering some help with it, and I do appreciate that. And even though we had a lot of issues, I do feel proud of my team. We worked really hard, and I do appreciate the work they all put in. Things that I would do differently. I would rather use C++ rather than Blueprints. I know it's a bit harder to use than Blueprints, but they would have way less conflict errors than what Blueprints were giving us. So I would probably more likely next time use Blueprints far less than what I was using for this project. And I've started at the end of the project using C++ more. Another thing is I know that like Unreal has its own version of like Git revision, so it doesn't have that many conflicts with Blueprints. I wish to understand that better next time. So hopefully the next time I work with Unreal, we won't have this many issues with Blueprints failing to merge and all that. Thank you. That was Eric Edwards. I'm Eric Edwards. Have a nice rest of your day.
Hello, I'm Nathan. And this is my work. You'll see my pictures of what I did on the side. What went right is the pixelating textures. I like making the vegetation models, the hard surface models for outside and the kitchen cabinets, laying out the scene in Unreal, post-processing, the wind material, and day-night cycle. What went wrong is the GitHub merge errors with Unreal. It would cause me to lose some work sometimes, but I just had to redo it. Poor optimization for the vegetation at first, but I figured out how to make LODs in Unreal. And being able to beat the game without entering the house, because I didn't take account for the trash that was outside when I put in the count. What I learned was Unreal workflow, Unreal blueprints, how to optimize Unreal games, how to set up scenes in Unreal, Unreal materials, how to work with the GitHub better so it doesn't have merge errors, and how to play video and sound in Unreal.
So what would we do differently? We would choose an engine that better fits the team's comfort level and technical experience. We would set up a stronger version control practices early on to avoid merge conflicts and corrupted files. We would reduce the initial scope sooner and focus on getting the core gameplay loop working first. And we would create builds earlier so there's more time for testing, polishing, and fixing major issues. Now, for what we would do again, we would keep the strong team communication and supportive group environment that we've had. We would also continue using references and documentation to keep the game's vision clear and consistent. And we would keep the creepy atmosphere, the environmental horror style, and the pixelated visual direction that we had for the game as well. And lastly, we would continue helping each other solve problems whenever unexpected problems came up. Thank you, that's all.